It is one thing to kill a man. It is entirely something else to kill an idea. Even in the face of repeated failures, military defeats, and a mountain of corpses, ideas persist, waiting for a new host, for a new vector of transmission. So it was when the old world burned away in atomic fire, smothered in fallout and the mist of biological and chemical weapons. Despite every effort made to the contrary, humanity remained, an outpost across the Great Plains, across the Asiatic steppe, and deep beneath once great cities in a labyrinth of metro tunnels. Their outpost carrying forward the light of civilization in a world overrun with nightmarish mutants. For a time, these people lived complacent, expecting that their circumstances, what they had experienced, would be temporary and that they would be rescued and that their lives would return to normal. As the days turned to months and soon years, hope of rescue faltered, and with it, the central authority that held these stations together collapsed. Divided and distrustful, driven solely by their desire for survival, they reverted to older ideals, to the powers of faith, to the glory and strength embodied in old Soviet architecture and its symbols. Still others, recognizing the power of markets, positioned themselves to control trade, and for a time the peace was preserved. Yet, as is often the case, humans found cause for conflict. Not enough supplies, not enough space, and of course, ideological differences. The culmination of such conflicts seeing a revolutionary spirit sweep through stations of the Red Line. One by one they fell to the communists, and fears that the communists sought to take the whole metro led other stations to band together for ideological and practical reasons. The conflict that ensued soon bogged down into a stalemate, with men and resources thrown into the fray with reckless abandon. But ultimately, both sides were forced to come to terms. In the shadow of this peace, the Reich was born. In Pushkinskaya, disaffected radicals, disparate neo-Nazis, fascists, and allegedly some pre-war political groups seized power, driving out all non-Russians, a process that they would soon repeat in neighboring Chekhov and Tverskaya. In its first years, the Reich consolidated political and military authority within a single figure, a figure shrouded in propaganda and known across the metro as the Fuhrer. A figure who dreamed of cleansing the metro of the undeserving, of the disabled, of the non-Russians, of the mutants and the freaks. To this end, society within the Reich was regimented. Civilians shielded from the wider metro were expected to accept without question the benefits of the Reich, to hold its tenets within their heart, and to work for its glory in all actions, whether they be child rearing, teaching, or any other form of labor. In turn, they were provided with clean stations, purified food and water, and shelter the envy of any station. Those who failed to live up to such standards were pruned from society, either directly through immediate execution or over years of hard labor, regardless of their previous status or position within the Reich. Around 2035, there was an apparent shift from the previous trend towards ethno-nationalism. This took the form of requiring all citizens of the Reich to conform to ever-increasing standards, that they might be cleansed of abnormal genes, that they might give rise to a pure and better human. Their hostility to foreigners in general and a shoot-first mentality gave rise to a hostile, if not wary, perception of the Reich. As a direct result, few outsiders willingly interacted with the tri-station nation. This, combined with their comparatively small population, gave rise to a philosophy of quality over quantity, and as a result, soldiers of the Reich were well trained in tactics and combat, and those deployed to the border regions were provided with the best weapons and armor that could be produced or improvised. Everything from pre-war Kalashnikovs and automatic shotguns to armored rail cars and even a few panzers. Rail cars covered in slabs of armor with a turreted cannon, a weapon unmatched in the metro, designed to instill fear in all who dare stand against the Reich. Wary peace would eventually be broken as communist guerrillas fought skirmish battles across the Reich's outer outpost. These raids, nominally committed by an independent movement of people with no ties to the Red Line, brought the great ideological, if not historical, rival to the forefront of the Führer's mind. And while sources are conflicted on who fired the first shot, both committed vast quantities of men and material to the conflict, viewing it as a grand ideological crusade. By 2033, the war had ground to a halt, with fighting concentrated on a 2-tunnel-wide stretch between Lubyanka and Verskia. Waves of poorly trained and equipped redliners were slaughtered in futile charges against the Reich's position. And though not in danger of necessarily losing their own position, the Reich was incapable of launching an offensive of its own. The loss of life eventually forced both sides to negotiate a ceasefire the following year, and while officially at peace, small skirmishes continued, and a paranoid Cold War set in, with each side carefully examining their own subjects for hints of subversion. Those found wanting would be sent to stalags, vast complexes filled with captured redliners, dissidents, or subversives, where each day their lives were in the hands of bored guards, and where they were destined to work themselves to death. And should any dream of escape, the whole facility could be filled with gas, dooming all of its inhabitants. Or so the rumors say. The Reich would use this peace to expand its holdings, building expansive fortifications between their home station and occupied outpost along the Serpukovsko-Timiryaviska line. And while they failed to gain control of any neighboring populated stations, they would make an effort to return to the surface, constructing a number of military outposts secured by heavy machine gun emplacements. Their efforts representing some of the first settlements built on the surface since the end of the Great War. The ceasefire would not last. Conflict returned, this time sparked by a rumor that D6, a pre-war government station packed with weapons, vehicles, and food capable of supporting the Reich for the foreseeable future, had been found. Motivated to secure this station for themselves, a plan was drawn up. Operation El Dorado. And even as they prepared, their old enemy, the Red Line, was taking steps to secure the station, hoping to acquire the stored bioweapons that they might control the entirety of the metro. In an attempt to preserve the peace, a conference was held in the city station of Polis, with representatives for each of the major powers, that they might work cooperatively in distributing the supplies from D6. Despite the Führer officially canceling their plans to conquer D6, the conference broke down, with tempers flaring when it became clear that a faction of the Red Army was on the march. They swarmed through the southern tunnels, their massed infantry supported by newly produced tank railcars. At the same time, they launched a major offensive to secure D6. Their efforts were eventually blunted, and the bulk of their forces lay dying or in retreat. With the Red Line depleted, a contingent of their best forces and equipment lost, the Führer saw an opportunity to expand his domain. To this end, the Reich moved to occupy Techelnaya, utilizing penal forces to plant charges in an attempt to cut it off from the rest of the Red Line. The failure of this force allowed the Red Army to counterattack, and day by day the Reich was pushed back. As the threat to their core territories grew, an order was given to collapse the tunnels and to buy time for their forces. Slaves and prisoners of war were forced into battle, ordered to be a human shield while explosives were planted, with reports suggesting that the Reich was destroyed, their explosives inadvertently resulting in a catastrophic flood of their entire nation. And with the seeming disappearance of the Führer, that the Reich was effectively at an end. Others suggest that some outside force negotiated a ceasefire before either faction was seriously harmed. What we can say for sure, tensions are rising across the metro, and that mankind has not yet seen an end to war.